As an adult, I appreciate The Incredibles a lot more. When I was a kid, it was just another cartoon with superheroes, but now that I'm older, I can appreciate the nuances. For us kids of the 90s, this is a recurring theme when we consider characters like Squidward and Benson, who we once thought were just mean and miserable, but who we now fully understand and can identify with. In order to understand how deep The Incredibles actually is, we have to get into the mind of its creator, Brad Bird. Brad Bird is the person who came up with the idea for The Incredibles, but before that, he was in the process of directing his first feature called The Iron Giant. As some of my millennials know, for a kids' movie, it has some dark themes, but this tale of grief, responsibility, and autonomy is a powerful one, no matter how old you are, and its history proves that the story was always meant to transcend age. The movie takes place in a world of tension, set during the Cold War, which was a very real, non-fictional conflict. After a mysterious object, the giant, crashes to Earth from outer space, we are immediately thrown into a scene of abject terror. A boat captain, stuck in a storm, mistakes the giant's huge glowing eyes for a lighthouse, and the full threatening weight of the being before us is clear. The boat sinks, sending him onto the rocks. So, before we even meet our protagonist, a 9-year-old boy named Hogarth, we're forced to consider the giant from the perspective of fear. Though the alien being will come to prove himself as a feeling and friendly entity, the story begins from a point of terror. We have to work backward in order to see him for what he really is. But humanity in general freaks out and even becomes prejudiced and biased against this giant. Everybody immediately thought this robot was dangerous when it was the most friendly thing ever. It was this little boy's best friend, but fear can be a dangerous thing, right? In the movie, there was a guy who was so afraid of this robot that he was willing to nuke the entire world in order to destroy the robot, and the robot had to sacrifice itself in order to save the universe. At this point, this 9-year-old little boy has to come to the realization that his best friend is going to have to sacrifice itself in order for humanity to live. In a nutshell, that is the premise of The Iron Giant. During this process, Bird had signed a production deal with Warner Bros. Feature Animation. Unfortunately, The Iron Giant wasn't really a financial success. It was a failure in the box office. At the time, Pixar was like, we really need new talent because they had a very small team for a long time. I think there have been 3 directors since Toy Story 2, and I think they still work there to this day. So they were like, we need some fresh talent. They reached out to Bird. So after The Iron Giant, he reconnected with John Lasseter, who was his old classmate. And because Pixar strived to be an alternative to Disney, things worked out well for him. He was like, I have this great idea for a movie about a family of superheroes. And Pixar was like, okay, great, let's do it. And so The Incredibles was born and was the studio's very first film where all the characters were humans. Bird came up with the lineup of the story's family members already worked out. A mom and dad, both suffering through the dad's midlife crisis, a shy teenage girl, a cocky 10-year-old boy, and a baby. Bird had based their powers on family archetypes, so each superpower has to do with their role in the family. Like Bob is the dad, so he's the strong one, so that's why his power is super strong. Helen has to be able to basically, as a mom, be stretched so thin, practically being in 2 places at once sometimes, especially as a stay-at-home mom, so she is Elastic Girl. She stretches out. Violet is an insecure teen who at this age wants to disappear. That's why she is always trying to disappear or trying to hide herself with her hair, so her power is invisibility. Dash is the hyperactive little brother, and that's why he's always running. His power is speed, and then baby Jack because he has so much potential and is the epitome of the Jack of all trades. He has a ton of powers. We can't forget Frozone. His power is ice because he is the coolest. This alone shows you how much care and thought went into it. There was a particular scene where there was a discussion amongst all of the writers, producers about Helen and Bob going back and forth. After he did his little part-time superhero, they get into an argument. We see this big intimidating guy and he's arguing with this petite woman. She is small compared to him, so you would think she would cower, but no. That's when they came up the idea to make her stretch herself to be bigger than him. And that shows that they are equal because we know this takes place in the 60s. Of course, sexism is prevalent and that's hinted at. This one intricate scene portrays them as equals. While she is a stay-at-home mom and a wife, she's still a boss. She is still his equal. And I thought that really showed just how much care that they took into creating this. And we even have discussions today about gender roles, so this film was sort of ahead of its time since we end up seeing him as a stay-at-home and her out doing the superhero stuff. One of the things Brad Bird really stressed when he was making this was that he didn't want to make this your typical Saturday morning cartoon superhero movie. He said that he disliked the fact that a lot of these Saturday morning cartoons and children's comics that would portray villains as unrealistic, ineffectual, and non-threatening. Like, in what world are there superheroes and villains and nobody gets injured or hurt? And he was like, I don't know if a group of psychologists came up with this and said, oh, this is not something good for kids to see, but he was like, I disagree. I think that kids should see it. In the movie, Dash and Violet have to deal with villains who are very willing to use deadly force against children. On another level, both Dash and Violet display no emotion or regret at the deaths of those who are trying to kill them, such as when Dash outruns pursuers who crash their vehicles while chasing him, or when both of them witness their parents destroy several attacking vehicles with people inside in such a manner that the deaths of those piloting them is undeniable. Despite disagreeing with some analysis, Bird felt it gratifying for his work to be considered on many different levels, which was his intention. It was thought-provoking. Sometimes sheltering your kids can lead to more harm, with them not knowing the real dangers out there in the world. It's not always safe to be blissfully ignorant. One thing that was clear when it came to Bird was that he wanted kids to understand that when it comes to conflict, there is always some type of consequence on the other end of it. People get hurt, and he felt like we shouldn't shield people from that because this is real life and we see that. And so we get the scene where Helen's talking to the kids and she's trying to get them to understand that these aren't the villains you see in your cartoons. These guys will hurt you. Growing up, it was like, okay, this hero gets hurt, but then everything is okay. And in the end, the bad guys get what they deserve and everyone is saved. But no, some superheroes die. Another scene that I think sums up how different this film is and how dark it's willing to go is the plane scene, when Helen discovers the kids are on the plane. Helen's plea for the attackers to stand down is raw. Then we have Bob's absolute devastation when he thinks his family is dead. Take the scene where Mr. Incredible discovers that the supers have been getting systematically killed off. This cements the fact that not every hero just gets to go home, and I felt like this was the first movie to really display that. The way it's cut between Helen's concern for her husband and how the A and B plots collide in such a way. It begs the question, are superheroes really invincible? You have a lot of power, but you also have that responsibility, and that responsibility can result in a lot of consequences, whether that be for you or your family. Even the fact that they were a family was a big deal. Most superheroes don't get married for obvious reasons. Not only did they get married, they also had kids. And so we see that dynamic. Bird said that he wanted a juxtaposition of the fantastic and the mundane. So you have these super-powered individuals dealing with the most mundane slice of life that we all can relate to. I loved the scene where Bob and Helen arguing over directions while driving to the big fight. It's such an average married couple argument, and it's happening in the middle of a life and death situation. Or the scene I mentioned earlier in the video when Bob and Helen are arguing and Bob gets loud, Helen stretches to become bigger and more intimidating, and the kids, instead of standing at the top of the staircase or listening at the door, use invisibility and super speed to spy on them. It takes tropes or experiences we're all pretty familiar with and adds a layer of fantastical to them. The family dynamic is also, it's what makes them such well-rounded characters. There's more to it than them just being superheroes that save the day. I particularly enjoy the film's relatability, since it depicts Mr. Incredible's internal turmoil as he transitions from a guy with infinite potential to someone who must carefully select how to use his power. He used it to save the world. He believed that if someone possessed power, it is their duty and obligation to use it to serve others. This is such an accurate representation of reality, especially now that there are conflicts happening in the world, and we can now see who is using their position for good, whether it is celebrities or the government. Then there's Helen, who is now a stay-at-home mother and was concerned about him cheating, which was also a valid concern for a stay-at-home woman in the 60s. Unfaithfulness among men was a serious issue, which is why I like how they inserted the scene where Edna had to tell her to pull herself together. You are lasty girl, because we see Helen get lost in the role of a mother. There are women who were once bosses now feel like their one and only identity is mother or wife. I like that the children then got to witness the other side to their mother and see other facets of her identity. It's the fact that there are so many moments in this 2-hour movie. I know there are so many more I could have included, but it's crazy that we can look back on it as adults and we see the intricacies of normal life blended in so well with the superhero lifestyle leading to such well-rounded characters. But let me know what you think down in the comments section below. What was your favorite scene from The Incredibles? Please subscribe, like, and share, and turn on post notifications so you get notified when another video is posted. It helps the algorithm or something. Thanks for watching.